When you trek, it teaches you very quickly that carrying lightly makes you trek very efficiently. And I learnt it the very hard way when I was doing an exploratory trek at Gidara Bugyal not many years ago. Now it was the month of November and I knew it was going to be rather cold, so I packed extra warm gears with me. I was also the expedition leader, so I was carrying the tent, food packets, cooking burner also in my backpack. And my backpack was heavier than usual. So when I started trekking, at the end of the first day, my legs started feeling heavy. By the time we got to the third day, I was utterly exhausted and spent. And I was wondering what is going on, because I've never felt like this before with my treks. I'm always a good trekker, a strong trekker. I've carried heavy backpacks earlier. And I was feeling absolutely exhausted. When the trek got over 3 days ago, 3 days later, I lost my confidence in myself to trek. I was nearing 50 at that time, and I thought I was getting old and losing my ability to trek. My co-founder told me that it was not that it was because my backpack was heavy that I did not trek very well. But I did not believe her. I genuinely thought that it was because of my inability or my age catching up that I was losing my ability to trek. So much so that I stopped trekking. The truth is, I was now scared of trekking. It took me almost 2.5 years to gather the courage to trek again. I went on this trek to Sandakphu, and I didn't go out of my own reason. It was more of luck that I went to do this trek. When I went on this trek, packed my backpack reasonably well, and I did the trek, and I found myself trekking rather well. I didn't have any issues doing the climbs. I was trekking better than most trekkers. I was going up and down easily. And by the 4th day of the trek, my confidence in my ability to trek came surging back. And I felt happy. But I also cursed myself. I was thinking, why didn't I trek in this past 2.5 years? Why didn't I have the courage to trek? I would have overcome this problem much earlier. But this incident left a very big, deep impression in my mind. It's a lesson that stayed with me, and it's something that I have always believed. And it is that what you carry defines how far you go. Just like in life, in entrepreneurship, we're constantly surrounded by things that we want to do. Why don't we open more weekend treks? Why don't we open more treks in the Sahyadris? Why don't we open more special program for children? These are the voices which come around to us all the time. And these voices come from people who are working very closely in the organization with us, people who are in senior positions, people who are in leadership positions. Now, these voices are voices of wisdom, of reasoning, of experience. You cannot really ignore these voices. Yet, what I have learned is when you backpack very heavy, it makes you lose focus. You need to carry only what matters. Let me explain this a little bit. In our early years of Indiahikes, when we were about 2 years old and about 2,000 trekkers were trekking with us, our biggest supporters were our trekkers themselves. And they would constantly urge us to do more. Why don't you get into other adventure sports? Why didn't you open a travel agency that can take care of booking? Why didn't you open more luxury treks? When we were 5 years old and about 5,000 trekkers were trekking with us, the voices from our trekkers grew louder. They would tell us, why don't you open biking trips in the Himalayas. We are anywhere trekking with you. We trust you. And if you do such a program, then we will happily sign up. Some of us asked us to aim higher. They said, why don't you get into mountaineering? There's no organization like Indiahikes in our country which does mountaineering expeditions. You won't believe in 2013, we actually carried out a mountaineering expedition to Mount Jogin 3 in the Himalayas. It was a full group of 12 mountaineers. When I look back at those days were very exciting but very dangerous for Indiahikes. Exciting because the possibilities in front of us were endless. We could just about do anything that we wanted to do. And we had a trekkers behind us. And dangerous because it was moving us away from the core of the core reason why we started Indiahikes in the first place, and that is to make treks more accessible. Trekking teaches us to focus. When your backpack gets heavy, you remove what is not required and you keep only what is essential and what is important. And that's what we started doing with Indiahikes. We removed the distractions from us and started on focusing on only one thing that mattered to us, that is make treks more accessible for ordinary people and nothing else. Instead of spreading ourselves wider, we started to focus deeper. This wanting to focus deeper helped us to address some very big problems of the trekking world at that time. Do you know at that time, trekking was done only in 2.5 months the entire year. 1.5 months in the summer between the middle of May until the end of June, and 1 month in autumn from middle of September till the middle of October. That's it, 2.5 months in the entire year where people could trek in the Himalayas. This does not sit well at all with us. We thought if trekking had to be more accessible, then people should be able to trek 365 days a year. So this made us start exploring and discovering and documenting trails in our country and putting them on the map of our country. Treks like the Kashmir Great, which is done in the month of July and August. Treks like the Kedarkanta, which is done in the winter. Treks like Brahmatal, which too is done in winter. Treks like Hamta Pass, which is done in the monsoon. Trekking teaches us that we focus. In entrepreneurship, we are constantly surrounded by voices around us. Voices that are asking us to do more. But the truth of the matter is, we need to do less. When we do less, we need to do it very well. And when you do something very, very well, it gives us two benefits. It drives growth and it creates a brand. Today, Indiahikes is India's largest trekking organization. 35,000 people trek with us every year. This did not happen because we allowed ourselves to be distracted. Rather, we focused on only one thing that mattered to us, and that was in making treks more accessible. Trekking teaches us to focus. It makes us carry a backpack light, and it makes us carry only what matters. Along with this, I learned another lesson in life that was associated with the world of trekking. Do you know, on a mountain trail, it's not the fastest trekker that gets to the summit. It's the trekker who's steady, who has a rhythm, who does not allow the breath to go out of control. That's the trekker who actually gets to the summit. I'll share a very personal story with you all today. Nobody knows this. On a very first trek of Indiahikes, I was leading a team to Rupkund. It's a glacial lake at 15,500 feet. Now, just before you get to Rupkund, there's a long section of the trek which traverses from the meadows to an alpine section. It's a long day, and there are plenty of steep climbs on this day, many of them through switchbacks. So on this day, I thought I needed to keep a larger eye on my trekker. So what I did was, avoiding the common trail which everybody takes, I took on the shepherd's trail which goes up and down over the hills of the mountains. Now, I started the trekkers on that day's trek, and as they started on the trail, I very quickly got off the trail and climbed the shepherd's trail, which was above the main trail, went over the humps of the hills and descended down on the main trail. And my trekkers were shocked and surprised to see me. What are you doing here? How did you even get here? I acted very nonchalantly that, yeah, it's all fine. I just got here trekking, and made them go on their way after seeing their well-being. And then again, I would scramble up to the shepherd's trail, go up and down 2 hills, and then again come back and meet another set of trekkers who were going. And again, much to their shock and delight, what are you doing here? And I did this the whole day until we reached our final camp at 14,000 feet. And when we reached this final camp at 14,000 feet, I felt the early onset of altitude sickness. And those of you who don't know what is altitude sickness, it is one of the deadliest things that can strike a trekker or a mountaineer in the mountains. It is simply your body's inability to acclimatize to the lower level of oxygen that you get there. At this camp, Bhagwa Vasa it was called, oxygen was at 60% to what you get at ground level. My head was reeling, and I had to make a decision, and I had to make it fast. I called all of my trekkers together and I told them, look, I won't be able to go with you to Rupkund. I have to end my trek here. They were very disappointed because I was the leader of the team. But such was the choice in front of me. But that day, I learned a very big lesson in trekking till today, which I follow. And it's a technique of trekking that I follow, which maybe perhaps all of you can even follow. And my technique is very simple. I don't stop to rest. But when I'm trekking, I also do not allow myself to go out of breath or where I'm panting. When I see myself going breathing harder than usual, I slow down until my breath comes to slightly above normal. But I don't stop. And I walk steadily. And this way, I've climbed the steepest of treks in the highest of altitudes. Entrepreneurship is very much like this. The pressure to go fast is constantly around us. Why didn't you open more treks? Why didn't you take venture funding? Why didn't you grab larger market share? But what the mountains have taught us is that slow is not weak, but slow is strong. And that's why we decided to take things slowly. We said no to investors. We did not take shortcuts. And we built Indiahikes slowly, trek by trek, leader by leader, system by system. Do you know there were a lot of big pocket travel organizations that wanted to get into the world of trekking. It was a new and upcoming world and very lucrative. But they didn't have the systems that we had built over the years. So what they did was they tried to acquire trekkers using their deep pockets by investing heavily in advertising in Facebook, in Google, in YouTube. But when it came to actually running the treks, they did not have the expertise. So do you know what they did? They started attracting our mountain staff with more money to work with them. But our mountain staff refused. They said, look, you have only these few treks where you will pay us more money, but you will not be able to give us 365 days of work that India Hacks gives. The inventory, the year-long inventory that we have about treks takes years to build. The kind of systems and processes that we have about trekking that we have built has to be done one day at a time. And even if you open up the systems and processes to you, you will not be able to replicate it. Like entrepreneurship, trekking has taught us that to build a long-term sustainable organization, you need to do it steadily. You need to do it slowly. When you do so, you build a formidable brand. A brand that takes years to build, but it takes an equally long time for it to ever dismantle or break down. Trekking has taught me a lot of lessons about entrepreneurship. Mountains don't lecture us, but they leave you with some very hard truths that stay with you for life. Today, I want you to take back two truths that I've shared with you from these stories. The first one is carry what matters. It will define who you are. There's a constant temptation to do more. But the truth is, if you do less, you need to do it really well. It defines who you are. The second truth is, walk steadily but not fast. Building a sustainable organization or a sustainable human being is not about speed, it is about rhythm. When you build something sustainable, you need to do it brick by brick, step by step. And that what you build stays for decades and decades. Today, Indiahikes is India's largest trekking organization. It's not because we rushed into things or we wanted to do everything that came our way. We carried light and we walked steadily. And this is the lessons that I want to leave you with today. Thank you.